student. Today we will study the chapter The Adventure of Toto by the movement of English book of class 9. Grandfather brought Toto from the Tonga drivers for the sum of 5 rupees. The Tonga driver used to keep the little red monkey tied to a feeding trough, and the monkey looked so out of place there that grandfather decided he would add the little fellow to his private zoo. The writer says that the grandfather purchased a monkey named Toto from a Tonga driver by paying 5 rupees to him. The Tonga driver had tied the little red colored monkey to a feeding trough so that he could not run away here and there. When the writer's grandfather saw the monkey, he had a desire to add him to the collections of animals when he had in his zoo at home. Toto was a pretty monkey. His bright eyes sparkled with mischief beneath and deep-set eyebrows, and his teeth, which were a pearly white and were so often displayed in a smile that frightened the life out of elder Anglo-Indian ladies, but his hand looked dried up as through they had been pickled in the sun for many years, and yet his fingers were quick and wicked. And his tail, while the adding to his good looks, grandfather believed a tail's would added to anyone good looks also serve the third hand. He could used it a hang from the branches, and it was capable of scooping up the delicacies that might be out of reach of his hand. Toto was, according to the writer, gives a description of Toto. He had bright, shiny eyes, which were full of mischief. The eyebrows were deeply set on his face, and his teeth were like a pearl. Many ladies belonging to the Anglo-Indian community got scared when they saw his teeth, which are displayed when he smiled. Toto's hands were dried and wrinkled, as if they had been dried in sun like pickled vegetable. He had long tail. The writer's grandfather thought that the tail added to the good looks of an animal. Toto's tail was like a third hand for him. It helped him hang from the branches of a tree. He also used it lift objects which were beyond his hand's reach. Grandfather always fussed when the grandfather brought home and some new birds or animals, so it was decided that Toto's presence should be kept a secret from her until she was in particularly a good mood. Grandfather and I put him away in a little closet opening into many bedrooms walls where he was tied securely, so we thought, to a peg fastened into wall. The grandmother was against the grandfather attitude bring a new pet birds and animal. So the grandfather thought that they would conceal this fact from her until she was in a good mood. They don't want to tell her that they had brought monkey as a pet. At that time they would disclose this to her. The writer and his grandfather secured Toto in a little cupboard in the writer rooms in order to be sure that Toto did not escape. They tied him to a hook in the wall. A few hours later, when grandfather and I came back to release Toto, we found that the walls, which had been covered with the ornamental paper chosen by the grandfather, now stood out the naked bricks of plaster. The peg in the wall had been wrenched from its socket, and my school blazers, which had been hanging there, was in the shade. I wondered what grandmother would say, but grandfather didn't worry. He seemed pleased with Toto's performance. The writer and his grandfather went to Toto's after a few hours. The sight was shocking. Toto has torn the decorative wallpaper, and he had also broken the hook and had escaped from his binding. Also, he tore the writer blazer into thin pieces. But grandfather didn't worry. He seemed pleased with Toto performance, and his clever said, "Grandfather, give time. I'm sure could have tied and torn piece of your blazer into row and made his escape from the window. I am sure it has been escaped from the window." The writer and his grandfather went to Toto after a few hours. The sight was shocking, and torn decorative wallpapers also, and broken hooks, and he escaped from the window. And they are thinking that it can be possible. Uh, his clever his clever grandfather, the grandfather was quite delighted to see Toto's adventure. He felt that Toto was very clever, and he said that if they would have given him more time, he would have tied the thin piece of the writer's torn blazer into a rope and would have escaped out of from the window. They are thinking about that. His presence in the house is still secret. Toto was now transferred to a big cage in the servant quarter, where a number of grandfather pets lived together, and a tortoise, a pair of rabbits, a tame squirrels, and for a while my pet goats. But the monkey wouldn't allow any of the companions to sleep at the night, so grandfather, who had lived Dehradun next day to collect his pension in Saharanpur, decided to take him along. Toto was shifted to a servant quarter. He was put in a cage, and he would live with the other pet in the grandfather's zoo. The zoo comprised of the tortoise, a pair of rabbits and squirrels, and the other pet of writer. Toto was very mischievous. He did not let the animals sleep at night. The writer grandfather had to leave for Saharanpur next day, and he decided to take Toto along as he was unmanageable. Unfortunately, I could not accompany grandfather on that trip, but he told me about it afterward. A big black canvas kit bag was proved for Toto. This with his straws of bottom and became his new adobe. When the bag was closed, there was no escape. Toto could not get his hand through the opening. The canvas was too strong for him to bite his way through. He efforts to get it out only had the effects of making the bag rolls about on the floor or occasionally jump into the air, and exhibitions that attract a curious crowd of onlookers on the Dehradun railway platform. The writer was disappointed as he could not accompany his grandfather and Toto on the trip. His father is narrated the happenings of trip to him later. He had got a special bag for Toto, and it was made up of strong material, canvas. He placed some dry grass on the bottom of the bag on the trip. The bag would be Toto's home, as he would live in it. The bag had a zipper on the top of it. The writer grandfather ensured that when the bag was closed, Toto would not be able to escape from it. Neither could be come out, and it was closed with zipper, nor could it bite the strong canvas material in order to run away. Still, Toto made successful attempt to come out of the bag. Due to this, many times the bag would roll on the floor, and it would certainly jump in the air. This movement were noticed by the people on the railway platforms and made them curious know what was inside the bag. Totos remained in the bag in Saharanpur. But while grandfather producing his tickets at the railway, Toto suddenly poked his head out of the bag and gave the ticket collector a wide grin. Toto was remain in the bag in Saharanpur, but when the grandfather is taking the tickets in the railway station, then Toto suddenly poked his head out of the bag and gave the ticket collector a wide grin. Toto remained secured in grandfather's bag till Saharanpur. At Saharanpur railway station, the writer grandfather was taking out his ticket to cross turnstiles at the time. Toto peeked out of the bag and smiled at the ticket collector. The poor man was taken aback, but the great presence of mind and much to grandfather annoyance, and he said, "Sir, you have a dog with you. You have to pay for accordingly." In vain, and grandfather took Toto out of the bag, and the vain did he tried to prove that monkey did not qualify as a dog or even a Toto was classified a dog by the ticket collector, and 3 rupees was some handed over as his fare. Handed over as his fare, and the ticket collector was astonished to see him, a monkey in a grandfather bag, and he recovered quickly and asked grandfather to pay the ticket money for traveling with the dogs. In the veins, grandfather take Toto out of the bag. Grandfather was successfully explained to the ticket collector that Toto was a monkey and not a dog, and he insists that Toto was not even an animal with a 4 feet, but the ticket collector was framed that Toto fell in categories of dog. Grandfather had to pay 3 rupees for the ticket. Then grandfather, just to get on back to took from his pocket and per tortoise and said, "What must I have pay for his since you change for all animals?" For all animals. And the ticket collector looked closely at the tortoise, propped it with the forefinger, gave grandfather a pleasant triumphant look, and said, "No charges, it is not a dog." The ticket collector took a close look of the tortoise and pushed it slightly, announced the grandfather was not required to buy a ticket. It did not fall in the category of dog. The writer's grandfather finally came to know the Toto's presence in the house. She allotted him a space in the stable along the family donkey Nana. And on the first night, a stable grandfather visited Toto, and he found Nana's restless pulling at ropes in the order to stay away from the heap of the hay. When Toto is accepted by grandfather, he has given a comfortable home inside the stable, and the companions of family donkey on the first night in stables and paid him to see if it was comfortable. To his surprise, he found Nana without apparent causes pulling at her halters, trying to keep her head and possible from the bundles of hay. Grandfather gave Nana slaps across her hunches, and she jerked back, dragging Toto with her. He had fastened on to her long ears with the sharp little teeth. Grandfather hit Nana on the back in order to stop it. Nana jumped back with a jerk, and Toto was dragged along her. A great treat. A great treat for Toto during cold winter evening was a large bowl of warm water given him by a grandmother for his bath. He could cunningly test the temperature with his hand. Then he gradually stepped to the bath, first 1 foot, then the other. He had seen him doing until he was into the water up to his neck. In the winter season, Toto enjoyed having a warm bath. He would present it to Selfish, and before starting his bath, he would check the temperature of water. He would copy the writer and stepped into the tub on the foot at that time. He would sit in the water with his face out of it. Then he would rub himself with soap. When the water became cold, he could run out of its stoves in the kitchen in order to dry himself. Toto got annoyed if he was laughed upon. He would get hurt and then refuse to take bath. The writer recollects an incident when the Toto had almost boiled himself. A large kitchen. Kitchen kettles has been left on the fire boils for the tea, and Toto, kindly himself the nothing better to do, decided to remove the lid. Finding the water just warm enough of a bath, he got it. with his head sticking out of his open kettle. This was just fine for a while until the water began to boil. Toto then raised himself a little, but finding it cold outside, sat down again, and he continued hopping up the down from some time until grandmother arrived and hauled him and half boiled out of the kettle. In a large kettle, water was boiling on a stove. Toto climbed up and stoves and removed the lid from it. And he felt that the water was warm enough for him to take bath. He entered the kettle and his head out of it when water started boiling. He became hot. Toto. He thought that he coming out of the kettle, but as the temperature outside was cool for him, he stayed in it. Toto kept jumping in the kettle for a while. It was when the writer's grandmother writer's grandmother is revived and hauled him half boiled out of the kettle. A large number of kettle water was boiling in a stove, and Toto climbed up the stove, and it became hot for Toto. It is thought of coming out of the kettle, but the temperature of outside was cold for him, and he stayed in it. Toto kept on jumping in the kettle, and while it was, a writer grandmother arrived, and she took the half-boiled monkey out of the kettle. If there is a part of a brain, brain especially devoted to mischief, that part was hardly developed in Toto. He was always tearing things to pieces. Whenever one of my aunts came near him, he made every effort to get hold of part in our brain that governs our ability to create mischief. Then that part of Toto's brain was highly developed, and he had a great capacity to do mischief, and he was always busy doing mischief. Whenever the writer aunts passed him, he tried to tear their. One day in lunchtime, a large dish of pulao stood in the center of the dining. A large dish of pulao stood in center of the dining. He entered the room to find Toto stuffing himself with rice. My grandmother screamed, and Toto threw a plate at her. One of the aunts rushed forward and received a glass of water in the face, and when grandfather arrived, Toto picked up dish of pulao and made his exit through the window. He found him in the branches and jackfruit tree. The dishes still this in arms. He remained there was afternoon, cutting slowly through the rice, determining on finishing evergreen, and then the order to spite grandmother, who had screamed at him. He threw the dishes down from the trees and scattered delights when it broke into the 100 pieces. The writer another incident when Toto created a lot of mischief. At a lunchtime, a dish of rice was placed on a table. When the family reached it, they found Toto eating. The writer's grandmother screamed at Toto, and in response, he threw a plate at her. When the aunt tried to catch Toto, he threw a glass of water on their face. When the grandfather arrived, Toto left the place through a window and dish of rice along with him. Toto remained out the entire afternoon, and he sought of the branch of jackfruit tree, determining to eat all rice. As the grandmother had schemed on him, he wanted to annoy her further, and so after eating the rice, he threw the dish. It broke into the several pieces. Obviously, Toto was not a sort of pet we could keep for a long. Even grandfather realized that we were not well to do and could not afford the frequent loss of dishes, clothes, curtain, and wallpaper. So grandfather found Tonga driver and sold Toto back to him for only 3 rupees. Finally, grandfather realized that Toto was not suitable to be kept at home. They could not afford the frequent losses, whatever has been done by the Toto, that he gave them. He tore the clothes, curtain, wallpaper, broke the dishes. So the grandfather sold Toto back to the same Tonga driver for sum of 3 rupees. So student, this chapter was ended here. We will discuss the another chapter of movement of class 9 in next video. So please subscribe my channel.